This is Jordan Poyer, safety for the Buffalo Bills, and you are now listening to Cover One Buffalo Podcast. Let's go.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo Podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, joined by my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. How we doing? It's a Wednesday. It's a victory week, and it's Patriots week, which I know is a special week for you.
Yeah, being from New England, actually, my phone's been silent this year. Weirdly enough, a lot of my New England friends.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Haven't been there, but yeah, no. Outside of that, it's been kind of an annoying week, man. The trade deadline, Bills fans a little antsy about this team, so that's some stuff we'll probably talk about later on in the show too. But other than that, I'm doing good. I'm ready to kick this show off.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to our special guest here in a moment, but obviously our show tonight presented by Uncle Jumbo's, our great partner all season long. And tonight's first half represented by Paul Bannock, Keller Williams Realty in Rochester. Make sure you look for Paul Bannock on Facebook and find him. You know, a family group that's going to represent you before, after, during the entire buying process, going to help you out and make sure it's a clean, beautiful experience. And tonight, to talk about this really impactful, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, anxiety-causing matchup is our friend Evan Lazar. Evan, how we doing?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
Not bad. It's weird. I think both fan bases and teams are in uncomfortable, interesting spaces right now, and I don't like how much I think this game matters.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You know, the records definitely don't say it matters all that much, I would say right now for the Bills. But I know there's those stats floating out there for Buffalo of, you know, having a negative point differential at this point in the season and how that usually means regression is coming. But you said we were going to do game predictions at the end. I am not going to pick the Patriots in a game until I see a drastic shift from Cam Newton in the offense. And up until that time, I think that Buffalo definitely should be, as they are, the favorites in this game. And I would actually honestly be a little bit surprised if the Patriots win this game.
Dude, 2-3 weeks ago, I would have thought the final game of the Bills-Patriots was going to be the biggest game of the year, possibly. Okay. And now I think that it's shifted right up to this game for both teams. And I think both teams' seasons can really go either way. The Patriots season could totally fly off the rails with a loss here, and the Bills season could dig into maybe not a full regression, but another mediocre season for the Bills, which we've seen before, and, you know, barely slipping and maybe in still possibly winning the division, but barely slip in and maybe getting a wild card spot if they lose to the Patriots there, because the stretch gets real tough for the Bills. And it's the weirdest feeling in the world that you're playing the Patriots, but it's a must win against the team you should be. It feels gross saying it even. It's a really weird thing, but it's a huge game for both teams right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely a massive game, and I'm definitely here to put some things in your text messages, Aaron. You said that no Patriots fans have been chirping you up into the game, so I'm here to chirp. No, I'm just kidding. I think the biggest thing for the Patriots is that we have never seen anything like this before in the Belichick era from New England, and you have players, even Belichick himself, I think to a degree, asking advice from other people on how to lose, you know, how to pull yourself out of a 3-game losing streak. I almost said winning streak because we're so used to saying winning streak. Losing streak, how do you do it? You know, players talking today to us, and guys like Jason McCourty and Brian Hoyer, who have been in Cleveland and other stops, are a little bit more vocal this week in explaining how you pull yourself out of this sort of rut. You know, guys like Devin McCourty or Julian Edelman have never had a 3-game losing streak in their entire careers. So this is totally uncharted territory for everybody. And Tom Brady's locker is no longer in the locker room to kind of think, oh, well, we'll be fine. You know, we got 12. It'll be all be okay. So that's definitely giving an uneasy feeling, I think, to everybody in New England, both inside the locker room and outside.
So before we get into some of the specifics here, you know, I think it's been interesting to see how big of a dichotomy there's been with this Patriots season, because you talk about those first 3 games and you open up with, you know, a comfortable win. And then even though that Seahawks game was a loss, it was such a, you know, throwing haymakers back and forth. Cam looked fantastic, clean mechanics, perfect accuracy, trading blows with Russell Wilson. Then you come back with a dominant win over the Raiders. And I think at that point, all Bills fans were like, all right, same old Patriots. We're going to have to do everything we can to get out of here. We were kind of hoping that they wouldn't get the full Cam Newton, but all right, they've kind of saved their season by bringing him in here. What is there? Has there been anything you've been able to put your finger on that's changed? Is it injuries or small pieces, or has it been something bigger in this last 3-game slide?
It's certainly been something bigger, and I think that there's sort of this teetering going on of not using COVID as an excuse, but also being wary of COVID and what that has caused for this team. And I don't think anybody in that locker room wants to say that Cam Newton contracting the coronavirus, then Stefan Gilmore contracting the coronavirus altered the season in a way that they're going to use it as an excuse. But at the same time, it was something that happened that pulled the Cam out of the Kansas City game 2 days before the game. Then they kind of have a little bit of a mini outbreak. Luckily, it didn't spread completely, but there was a little bit, about 6-7 players, I think it was finally the final number that ended up getting it. And what ended up hurting them more than actually the illness or anything like that itself, the virus itself, was the lost practice time that the starting offense had with Cam Newton while he was quarantining for the 2 weeks that he was out of the facility, about roughly 2 whole weeks there. So they basically, what ended up happening, and from my view, we saw a lot of this out of Cam Newton in training camp, where he was slow through his reads and some throws were good and some throws weren't. And it feels like all that progress that they had made from August through the first 3 games of the season had completely vanished because of the layoff. And now Cam is all the way back to square one, and they're back to repping up what they were doing in training camp, basic install in terms of the mental aspect of it and the physical aspect, the mechanics and the footwork and stuff like that, like it's the summer all over again in the end of October, which obviously it's no longer training camp and we're playing regular season games at this point.
Did you expect that much of a regression? Because I didn't get to watch the full game live when it was happening. So when I watched it back, I had heard and seen on Twitter how poorly Cam played. But then when I watched it, it almost felt like he wasn't grasping the offensive concepts, which I can see what you're saying and getting back into the swing of things, but it almost seems like a real mental regression there with the offense itself. Was it changes to the offense that you've seen, or was it him just, is my eyes lying to me that he wasn't really seeing the offense the right way and getting his reads the right way?
No, your eyes aren't lying. And I wanted to write specifically about a couple of plays where I'm sure you guys are familiar with Haas C juke or Haas Y juke at this point. The Patriots, that's a day one install type of play, right? They've been running it here for 20 years. And they ran it 3 times against San Francisco and failed to convert anything on all 3 of them. And one of them was an interception towards the end of the game to Julian Edelman on the juke route, which is Edelman's route. That's his bread and butter, right? Go sit there in the slot, run an option route. I'm sure the Bills do it plenty with Cole Beasley, kind of shift in and out based off the coverage and go from there. That's his wheelhouse. And they couldn't figure out that basic of a play. And to me, what it looked like, and this a lot has to do with game script, and I was hoping we were going to talk about this anyway tonight, where the Patriots, they need to play the game at one specific way. They need to be able to run the football on offense. They need to be able to run it 40 times to win the game. That's what they did against the Raiders, and that's what they did against Miami. And then secondly, on the defensive side of the ball, if you're a team that can get into a 12 personnel or a 21 personnel with tight ends and fullbacks on the field and run the football effectively against New England, get them out of their dime defense, they don't really play base defense anymore in the Patriot land. We're a dime nickel defense now with 5 or 6 defensive backs on the field. That works a lot against, like Kansas City or teams that just want to air it out on you. That's a perfect strategy. But when you go up against a team like the Niners, who can really lean on you with their running game, then it becomes problematic.
Yeah. It's a great call by Taylor.
And you can find these mugs in the description below and buy yourself one.
Playbook product.
Actually, Evan, you'll like these. Go to the description below. There's a lot more Patriots ones.
Yeah, there's
more Bills ones.
There's more plays
There's a lot more plays for the Patriots. So right, Greg, if you want to get right into the
Sure. We'll start out with Patriots offense versus defense. And, obviously I already talked about the portion of the shift that you saw in the 3 games. And I think that certainly applies very specifically to Cam and in how you described it. But let's talk about some of the other pieces here. I know everybody knows Julian Edelman, and I think there's been the assumption that I certainly came into the year intrigued and okay, I know it was a rough rookie year, but first round pick N'Keal Harry coming out. And then I'm actually a fan of Damiere Byrd. What has there been outside of Edelman that either still has potential to click or maybe why it hasn't quite clicked yet in the receiving targets game? Obviously, I know, we haven't seen a lot from the rookie tight end yet, and Izzo's still getting a lot of the reps there, but just in the options that Cam has, what gives Patriots fans hope for rekindling some of that through the rest of the year?
Not much in the passing game, to be honest with you. I think what the 2 things that you kind of look at with the Patriots offense are what I mentioned. If they can be a bully ball is what we have started coined it around here, where you run the ball 40 times a game. Cam's involved in the running game with design quarterback runs or read option type of plays, RPOs maybe sprinkled in there a few times. And you can be that sort of offense. And then there's another sort of iteration of the Patriots offense right now that's still trying to harken back to the Brady time and the Brady era. And I think that's the package that's struggling right now for Cam Newton, is because Cam isn't Tom Brady, right? With a Tom Brady type offense, you need to be precise. Your timing needs to be impeccable. Your anticipation needs to be impeccable. Your ability to read the defense quickly, both before the snap and after the snap, needs to be excellent. And all of those types of things, not to pick on Cam because he's great in his own right and in his own way, are not really Cam Newton style things. So what ends up happening is when you have a drop back passing game that's meant for Tom Brady, but you're playing it with Cam Newton, it makes all of Cam's flaws come to light, right? His footwork, his mechanics, his kind of inconsistent accuracy, his inability to read the field like he's got that supercomputer that Brady has in his mind. So the Patriots need to get back to that bully ball style of offense. Now, if there is one player that I would say outside of Edelman at receiver, the tight ends have done absolutely zero. They're the worst tight end group in the NFL. They're dead last in everything: catches, targets, yards. I don't think they've caught any touchdowns. They've only thrown 3 of them, so I don't think they have. And the only guy outside of Edelman that's really creating plays, I would say, Jacoby Myers woke up a little bit in this last game, but Damiere Byrd is giving them something on the outside. He's a nice piece. He's not a number 1. He's not a stud receiver like a Stephon Diggs, but he's a nice complementary piece if you had that guy. So they've gotten some good things out of him. Cam has missed him a bunch. I would say 4 or 5 times deep, just because of circumstances. The ball hasn't reached Damiere Byrd. He's ran his route well. He's gotten open for big plays down the field, and it's just been off, and they haven't been able to get him the football. Cam had a deep over route to him wide open in the game last week against the Niners, and he sailed it over his head because he was late to it. That's the sort of stuff that keeps on happening for Damiere Byrd. So he's really developed into a nice player. I know the Bills play a lot of kind of bail, cover 3 bail, some quarters, and I think that those comebackers and those stop routes along the sideline is something the Patriots might lean on a little bit just to get Cam going and get some 15-yard gains out of those if they can, just to give them some confidence.
So the other side of the offense, I think one player that I'm probably the most nervous about is the explosion we've seen from Damian Harris, and is a player that I think people were excited about. Then you had the IR stint to open up the season, but I think you've seen him get going here, and the interior of that Patriots offensive line is still everything it was supposed to be early in the season. That combination of Harris and, still solid players and Burkhead and White and just the entire backfield altogether with the running of Cam is where I'm most nervous. In what we've seen to this point, the Bills have shown a propensity to be run on. They've made some different changes here. They've tried to shift some things around. I'm really curious. I think the weather elements are going to push even more. It sounds like we're not going to have great weather, probably some high wind, some rain. I think that ground game is going to be a key to this. I'm curious has that shown anything to get up and running in the games that have started to get away from them, or does it need something that, like you said, game script really drives their ability to do that?
Exactly. Last week against San Francisco is very telling to me. The third quarter after halftime, they came out in 21 personnel and they tried to pound the rock down 2-3 touchdowns. That's how inept the passing game was for the last couple of weeks that they wanted to run their way back into a game. And obviously that's not going to work at the NFL level. And we know all the reasons from the analytics nerds on Twitter why it's not going to work, right? And it bared out in that game. So with the running game, I think the biggest thing is that if you allow them to stay in the game, or if they play the game with a lead, if they're able to get up on you quickly, then they can really run the football. They can do it in any way that they want to do it. They can be a zone team. They can be a gap team. They can be a read option or design quarterback run team like they were in week 1. And they can do a bunch of different things against you. But the difference is that if you get them behind or you get them into a shootout, that's usually not going to end up well for them. But still, at the end of the day, that sort of, offense of being a bully ball style offense and really relying on the run might be able to work in this kind of game against Buffalo. So I'm really interested to see. I think this is sort of where this game is going to end up being won or lost, is early on in that first quarter. If the Patriots can go on a 10-15 play drive where they run the ball 12-13 times, then that might set the tone that they're going to play from ahead, or at least play in this game competitively and be able to continue to run the football for 4 quarters. And that might be a way that they can actually beat the Bills.
And in that run game here, real quick, too, we talk a lot about toxic differential and explosive plays. And when I was looking up prior to watching the film on this, New England is ranked 7th from Sharp Football stats on explosive run plays. So you're also getting some chunk plays in the run game. It's not just a bully ball 4 yards at a time. This is where the majority of your chunk yardage is coming from, is in the run game.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they went to the running game against the Niners, is because that's how they gain yards. And you mentioned those 3 guys on the interior, Andrews, Mason, and Tooney. To me, that's the heartbeat of the entire Patriots team, not just the offense. Those 3 guys are the rocks of the entire Patriots team. And then Gilmore and Devin McCourty and the guys on the defensive side of the ball certainly have a lot to say about that too. But at this point, that's the tone setters. Those guys are the ones that kind of bring the attitude that we're going to be able to run the football. So against Denver, they were missing a couple pieces on that offensive line. It was really kind of a makeshift day for the entire day on the O-line. They got them all back against the Niners, but the Niners put up so many points so quickly that the Patriots weren't able to really get into their running game. So again, that's the scary part as a Patriots fan, or as Patriots observers, is that right now, Bill Belichick usually prides himself on flexibility, right? We can beat you in any way of type of game that you want. We can be areaed out against you. We can run it against you. We can play dime. We can play base. We can do whatever you want. This team, this 2020 Patriots team, is one-dimensional all over the place. And unfortunately, when they get into bad matchups like with San Francisco, that can really be exposed. So I'm interested to see how the Bills play this game, because the way they've been playing fits into how the Patriots want the game to go. But maybe Buffalo becomes completely game plan oriented for this one and changes a lot of what they do on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, we'll flip over to the other side here for Aaron to run through the Pats defense and the Bills offense, because it's interesting. You're talking about kind of both teams' weakness against the other team's weakness, and now the other team's strength against the other team's strength. It's going to be interesting to see. I've waited every single week and had multiple times where it's like, okay, this is the week they're going to get the running game going, because it really makes sense to be able to go back to that. And they've remained pass happy every single game, regardless of game script. I mean, some of them, obviously some of the losses, it leaned into that. But even the games where they should have been, and should have milked the clock or should have pounded the rock late, they still ran. They ran late with the Raiders they passed late against the Raiders with the big lead. They passed late with the Jets with a decent lead. And it's just something that I'm curious, do they have that tool in the tool belt to be able to go to that? And I think we're going to find out this weekend, because this is absolutely the week to do that.
Yeah, and not all those things all lining up, but then the weather does look miserable here in Western New York this week.
I'm almost hoping it forces their hand that they can sell out to stop the Patriots run, because they know they can't pass because the wind's so crazy.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough day weather-wise, even if it doesn't live up to what meteorologists are saying now. I've heard up to 60-mile-an-hour gusts possible, but I don't suspect that's going to be the case. But it gets nasty up here the last couple of weeks. So I do think that's going to be something here. But one thing I want to really talk to you about this defense, usually we break down each piece in each unit of the defense, but I want to talk about a Belichick defense really as a whole here, because even though you guys lost a lot of guys before the season even started to COVID, and that was a majority on the defensive side and in some big spots, I just had this idea that Bill Belichick's such a great coach that his schemes, in the same way kind of a Sean McDermott scheme is, it's more about the scheme itself than the individual parts, right? As long as everyone's doing their job within that scheme, you can get something going. And they still had enough parts, in my opinion. And early on, we saw that front seven flying around. They weren't hitting home on sacks, but we saw guys flying around, creating pressures, creating some havoc. That has kind of disappeared here. And when I'm looking at their DVOA, 25th overall, 25th in the run, 23rd in the pass, these are numbers that I would never have suspected, even from a Bill Belichick defense without all of his players. Kind of break down the kind of overall philosophy of what's going on with this scheme and this defense for us.
Well, I think the biggest thing is what you pointed to with the fact that I would say this defense is if I could imagine Bill Belichick's opinion on this defense, if he could tell us all the truth, I would think he probably hates it on paper, because mainly the biggest thing is what I mentioned, is that it's not a flexible defense anymore, right? So he can't do what he needs to do week in and week out to game plan to his opponent. And all they can really do at this point successfully, and overall the reason why I think the DVOA numbers and some of the statistics are so bad about the Patriots defense is that they show those flashes of being that unit last year only in spurts, right? So they've been talking about this for weeks, the Patriots have, that they are not getting consistent plays, stringing together good plays on the defensive side of the ball. So you might see, 3 or 4 great coverage snaps on a particular drive where they just absolutely lock everybody down. And the next drive, it's a bust, or, somebody gets beat one-on-one or something like that. And you're like, that doesn't look like the Patriots defense that we're used to seeing. So they haven't been overly consistent. But again, I think the thing that fascinates me about this matchup, and I know the Bills, they have a couple of tight ends. Some of them I know are out with COVID and stuff like that. They do have a fullback. I think he's a rookie, though, that's on the roster. Mm-hmm. And how does Brian Daboll want to play this, right? Because the Bills typically play out of 11 personnel when they pass the ball, and they try to air it out now with Josh Allen. And I think if you play that sort of way against the Patriots, that's really the only way that they can kind of stay in this game, is if you play to their strength and allow that secondary to go out there. And Belichick will have something planned for Stefan Diggs, whether it's Gilmore or bracketing him or something like that. And if it's Gilmore on Diggs, then John Brown will see the brackets, or whatever the case may be. They'll have something ready to stop this passing attack. And they have the ability with the personnel that they have to do it and do it effectively, rushing the passer and also covering guys with all those defensive backs. So the question is does Daboll look at that San Francisco tape and say, well, we got John Brown, we got Diggs, we got some tight ends. Let's put all these guys on the field. Let's run some of the jet motion stuff that the Niners did. Let's run the ball right at the Patriots and play a different style of game. That's not how Buffalo's played all year, so I could understand why he would just want to go with what's working. But that is definitely going to play into the Patriots' strength. And I still feel like Belichick will be able to at least slow down Josh Allen a little bit, because he does have that personnel in the back end to do it.
Well, and that's my biggest fear here, is pretty much what you talked about. Is Daboll going to be stubborn in trying to keep with what they've been doing? Because it did work great, but it has slowed down. And in that slowing down, Nate and Eric did a great breakdown of Josh Allen. He's missed on some big plays, and there's still a little bit of slow processing at times and not making the right reads, even though he's huge improvements in steps forward. He still has a long way to go in some of that stuff. And you don't want to have slow processing or missing reads when you're playing a Belichick defense. I don't care who the guys are lining up. So I do think you're right that if they line up wide, it does play into Belichick's hands a little bit. I don't know that. I'm not going to say don't do that, right? Like, you still want to have that option available to you even with this weather, but they definitely need to get the run game going. So let's kind of talk about, that defensive line a little bit. Some young guys up front getting a little bit more snaps probably this year from COVID than we've seen in that front seven. Tell us about some of these guys, because they're not all names we've seen across the Patriots here for the last 10, 15 years. There's a lot of new bodies here. How are they developing? What do you like out of these guys? Because this is still a development season for the Patriots.
Definitely in the front seven on defense. They got a bunch of young players, as you said, bringing along guys like Winovich, Byron Cowart, who was a 5th-round pick in 2019, has had a really big role as sort of a penetrating nose technique. And then they have Lawrence Guy, who's kind of the rock there in the middle. He's our, really sturdy run defender.
If you could leave him here after the game, that'd be great.
He's a fantastic player, and he's actually really fun to watch because his technique is just so flawless. And there's not very many guys. There's maybe like 8 to 10 guys in the league that hold up as well against double teams as Lawrence Guy. You bring a double team against him on the strong side, he's making sure everybody else has a one-on-one on that side of the ball. And that's how the Patriots are able to stop the run for the most part with, a lot of defensive backs on the field is they're able to keep those guys clean. And Adrian Phillips is sort of a guy that they've signed as a safety, but he's basically a linebacker. I mean, you might as well switch his position at this point. And he plays linebacker for the Patriots at about 220, 225. And similarly to rookie Kyle Duggar, who's got an ankle injury. I don't know if he's going to be out there on Sunday, but hopefully he will be back. And those two guys have the pop, and then they have that speed and processing speed for Phillips that they can make up for the fact that they're not 250 pounds. So the guy that every offensive coordinator, and I'm sure Dable's right there with him, that they circle is 51, Juwan Bentley, who sometimes the statistics say he's had a nice game against Denver. I think he had like 12 tackles and a couple TFLs, and everybody was like, oh, that was the best Juwan Bentley game I ever saw. But when you actually watch the tape, what ended up happening was that Pat Shurmur, the Broncos offensive coordinator, was getting him into space so much and really shredding them off play action or misdirection type of plays and making him move side to side that the Patriots just started firing him at the line of scrimmage every single play and basically made him into a defensive lineman and just said, just go in there and either rush the passer or stop the run and don't even worry about the coverage aspect. And they sort of patched it together that way. So 51's the guy. He's the one that people are circling. He's the Waldo. Get him into space, get him into coverage, and see if you can attack him. And the Niners did it with jet motion, and it killed the Patriots. Little pop passes and handoff jet motions. And my concern is that Dable's going to see that, and the Bills certainly have a pretty fast guy there in John Brown that can probably take a jet motion 80 yards to the house if the Patriots aren't ready for it. And I'm waiting to see where and when Dable's going to try to test that a little bit.
Yeah, and they will. The jet motion is a big part of the offense, and they'll definitely test that. We got a lot of questions in here, and I got to ask you about it while we're talking about the defense. Our old guy, Stefan Gilmore, we're hearing the rumors. What's going on? Is he going to be on the move? Is he playing this weekend? If he is on the move, what's going on with him, man?
It's a really touchy situation at the moment. Stefan Gilmore woke up this morning and found out that he put his house on the market here in Boston, and that's always sort of how it starts, right? That's always the beginning of the end, is the old house going on the market.
But that restructuring of his deal was basically this is the last year anyway, right?
It was an advance of money. So basically, to sum it up for you, he's a free agent after the 2021 season, and he's going to want one more big contract, and it's not going to come from the Patriots and Bill Belichick. And I don't know if that's actually been told to Stefan Gilmore, or if the Patriots are kind of saying this is our number, which is their typical MO. They say, this is our number, and if you want it, then you can take it. And Gilmore's going to get paid one more time, and it's not going to be from New England. So the question really is, are the Patriots going to try to cash in on the asset and trade him before his contract is up, which is obviously a very Belichickian move, is to get a higher draft pick back than you would in the comp pick formula for Gilmore if he leaves in free agency. So it's either going to happen, if it does, at this trade deadline or in the offseason next year. They did shop him in the offseason this year a little bit. They were strapped up against the cap. They knew that this move was probably coming at some point. So they did try to get it a little bit sooner, but they didn't get any offers that they were really crazy about. And teams for a 30-year-old corner are not necessarily knocking down the door with the first-round pick right now.
Yeah.
Well, before we get you out of here, we got to put you on the spot.
Yeah, let's hear it.
No, you hinted at it earlier.
Yeah.
For the first time in 20 years, it's not a foregone conclusion what's going to happen in this game. What are you expecting to see on Sunday?
I'm not, like I said at the top of the show, I'm not going to pick the Patriots until they show me that they can put together a complete game on both sides of the ball again. So for right now, I'm going to take the Bills still. The only caveat that I will give to give Patriots fans hope is that Bills fans better hope that Josh Allen doesn't turn into his rookie season and second season, Josh Allen, I guess I should say, and start throwing the ball all over the place and throw 3 picks against Belichick again. If that happens, then the Patriots got a chance. But if Josh Allen can protect the football and keep the Bills ahead of the chains, I don't see the Patriots being able to keep up with them.
No, Give us a score. What do you think?
I would say I trust Belichick enough to confuse Josh Allen to keep the Patriots relatively in it. So I would say something like, 27-20, maybe 27-16 if it's more of a blowout, something along those lines. Like I said, it's just that the passing offense for the Patriots is really broken. And if the game doesn't go a certain way right now for them, then they can't stay in it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Tell people where they can find you and anything that you're up to, and Yeah,
absolutely. So you can follow me at Evan Lazar on Twitter, and I do write for clnsmedia.com. You can find me on there, my written work, my podcast, which I'm doing with Greg tomorrow, doing this the opposite direction. So we're going to pick on the Bills plenty.
So it's a home and home series.
That's right.
Exactly. It's a home and home. So it's the Patriots Beat podcast right there on the bottom of the screen, I think. And that about does it. You can find everything on my Twitter at Evan Lazar.
Awesome, man.
Appreciate it, Evan. Hey, guys, anyone who's looking for it, Evan is a very even-handed Patriots reporter. Really good follow. Is very, objective in what you review. I've been really impressed in what you've questioned and brought up and been able to point out to give hope for the future. It's good to see that kind of analysis for the team.
I appreciate that, guys. Thanks.
All right. So as we kind of get in here, obviously I don't expect anything less from Evan as we're getting into this kind of thing and kind of identifying, what's next for this. And, I opened it up with it when I introduced Evan. I'm not comfortable with how big of a deal I think this game is. Like, I really think this game is critical. You look at, the difference of if the Patriots get a win here and they go to 3-5 versus a 5-3 Bills team with a game in hand in Buffalo. I mean, that puts them right back into it from a division standpoint. If the Bills win and they have a game in hand, and now it's 6-2 versus 2-6 with a full 4-game lead plus the half game tiebreaker of the head-to-head, it ends their season. I don't know any other way to put it. If they lose 4 straight and they go to 2-6 and are reeling like that, I think it ends their season. There are too many good teams in the AFC this year that are vying for those extra wild card spots. It makes me nervous how big of a deal I think this game is this early.
Yeah, and even though the Bills beat Miami, even if they win this game, Miami's still right there on their heels, unfortunately, and could, who knows what's going to happen when Tua gets in and he could go on a run. So the Bills need to really get more AFC games. They need to build up some games here. I do think that it's a really big one for both teams, though. I don't want to see the Bills drop a game before they head on to play Arizona and Seattle here coming up. And then you have the Steelers coming up, beyond that. You can't afford to start dropping games. Now, I do think winning this game is the difference between getting double-digit wins and being a 9-win team, and that could maybe 9 wins gets you the division this year. I don't know how that's going to shake out, but I don't want to play the game at the end of the year of sitting here listening to you go through probabilities of how it's going to shake out. I want it to just be done. So to me, there's a number of reasons why this is a must win, really. And I don't want to say that loosely. I think Sean McDermott's downplayed a little bit with the PR. You saw the PR of the whole team saying, oh, this is just another game. Internally in the organization, this is not just another game. This organization needs to beat the Patriots. Fact of the matter. Everyone does. Sean McDermott 0-6 against a Belichick-led team. This organization's won, 4 games in 20 years, 5 games or something in 20 years against this team, most of them without Brady or starters or Brady for a half or something like that. So we haven't beat them. So in the organization, it's a must win, kind of the bigger picture. But then for this season, man, I think you're going to drop some games coming up here against some better teams or against some really good teams. And so you got to beat the teams. We talk about it a lot on this show. You got to beat the teams that you should. And on paper, the Bills should beat this team. What scares me the most is how this game's, you talked about it with Evan, dude. It's, weakness our weakness going up against their weaknesses, their strength on offense going up against our weakness. The weather is going to play a part in this. I know people don't like to talk about weather playing a part in football games, but it is going to play a part in this. And that scares me. I think the weather is going to keep this game a little bit closer than maybe it should be if it was in a dome or, on a sunny, bright September day. The Bills running game hasn't proven anything to me. Feliciano coming back sounds good. I don't know how his first game back is going to look. I'm nervous, man. I'm not going to lie. I'm sitting here. I shouldn't be this nervous looking at a 2-win team, but I'm very nervous.
And let's kind of shift over here into our player spotlight. So our sponsor, Uncle Jumbo's, being able to identify a player that I know you and I were both excited about that I think gives us some options. We'll talk in a little bit about trade targets, and I know everybody's excited to talk about potential trade targets for the team here. One of the reasons that I think both you and I have cooled a little bit on the immediate need for an upgrade in the secondary, unless it's a significant one, in the Desmond King area, is because of Dane Jackson. And talk a little bit about some of the film you looked at in what we might have in the 7th round pick.
Yeah. So I do want to, I think there's a little bit too much excitement maybe in the fan base on Twitter. I think he showed out really nice. When you have a 7th round pick come into his first NFL action ever, no preseason.
Yeah,
so he didn't even get
game.
that this year. First game, gets 100% of the snaps. I was expecting when I turned on the film to see more, we saw on the plays he was targeted, we saw really nice plays. And our friend Bruce Nolan talked about that with Taron Johnson a couple weeks ago. Like, you can't just look at the plays guys are targeted. So when I went back, because we saw that from Cam Lewis. Cam Lewis had some plays that he probably wanted back, even though fans thought it looked good because he wasn't targeted. When I went back and looked at Dane, there wasn't a whole lot of mistakes that you would expect out of a 7th round rookie. He didn't look out of place really at any point in the game. He looked like he fit right into this rotation, and that's good enough for me, right? I don't need Dane Jackson to come in and beat out Josh Norman and Levi Wallace and be cornerback number 2. I think there's fans out there that might think that he needs to be on the active roster immediately and be inserted, ahead of those guys. I don't think that's the case at all. But what I really want to see is Levi Wallace getting healthy here. I want to see a rotation of not just Levi Wallace getting 100% of the snaps, but a rotation between Levi Wallace, Dane Jackson, Josh Norman once he gets healthy, Cam Lewis and Taron Johnson rotating at that slot. I think that's the best bet for the Bills right now. I think they can still scheme up enough stuff where they can hide some of the deficiencies in some of these guys, where they don't need to go out and get a big deal. I know people were pounding the table today for the Bills to somehow find a trade for Stefan Gilmore. Like, that's not where we're going.
A little bit why that's not possible.
Yeah, and that's not what they're doing. I think they want to. When they brought in Josh Norman, I think they wanted to sort of have a cornerback by committee. I don't have anything to base that on, but I think they wanted a nice rotation at cornerback of guys that can play within the scheme. And Dane Jackson does that. I think he's a much chippier Levi Wallace. Michael Burke's here saying he's a very aggressive in college. He is very aggressive. Yeah. And he's also not really out of place all that much with being as aggressive as he was, at least in this one game that I got to watch. So I do want to see him. I would love to see him get up on the active roster here. I want to see him on the game day here this week. He's earned, in my opinion, more snaps here at the NFL level. I think it's just a matter of time before they sign him to the team here, especially with whatever's going on with the club on Cam Lewis's hand. We don't know. And what I want to see this week is if Cam Lewis can go, can Dane play inside and out? I don't know that yet. And that's something I really want to see.
Yeah, this question here, has he surpassed Cam Lewis and Taron Johnson? I still see him separately. I think he's more of an outside corner. I think people were excited about the possibility that he could play nickel. We haven't seen it. So I don't want to assume that he didn't do it a lot at Pitt. At Pitt, he was an outside corner because when you're a good NFL caliber, cornerback at a school like Pitt, you're going to play probably the other team's number 1 receiver. So he didn't play a lot of nickel there. I know people have assumed that his skill set will translate, so I'm open to it, but we haven't seen it yet. So I don't want to assume that we're just immediately going to shift him inside and that he would take over for that. I think he's earned reps. So if Levi Wallace and Josh Norman come back and are healthy and they want to get him on the field and the coaching staff decides it is at nickel, I'm open to that. I'm not ready to say yes for sure he's capable of doing that because we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of people have a tough time, because I think a lot of people just think, who's your third worst cornerback? And they move to the slot.
Like a ranking.
It really is an entirely different position. And there's been a few guys the Bills have been able to find. EJ Gaines comes to mind, who can play inside and out as a backup player. If Dane Jackson could be that would be fantastic, because Taron, you're not going to move Taron to the outside. I would like more ability from a guy like Taron Johnson to be able to move in and out. Also, I want to urge fans with what I was watching, kind of talking about the cornerback room and as a whole. Taron looked pretty good last week with Matt Milano getting back in some of the passing reps. He had a huge third down stop. He had a really good, pretty much a good day passing. There was that one hiccup we've kind of discussed offline on that 3rd and 20, which I still don't think was necessarily on Taron. And
it was a bad play for the defense, but it was more of a good throw by Darnold than it was a blown coverage by any one individual.
He sort of baited in Darnold to make that throw from the opposite hash, and then Darnold did it, and he threw a great throw, and Taron misjudged it. So it looked worse than it was. He looks good. I want to see Levi Wallace get back here, because he was starting to look better right before that injury too. So I think the cornerback room as a whole isn't as much of a need as fans think it is here heading into this trade deadline. And you hear the names like Worley, and they connect the Panthers. Yeah. I think if you get Worley, I honestly think he's the last guy in the depth chart right
literally
now.
Like opinion. 6th or 7th. Yeah. So now don't get me wrong. Aaron and I both would love a player like Desmond King if they can go out and get an absolute day one starter on the trade market on a rookie deal. Absolutely. If you can get me a day one starter on a rookie deal, I'd sign up for that every single day of the week. But a guy like Daryl Worley is not better than what we've seen from Dane Jackson or Levi Wallace or Taron Johnson. I don't want to bring in a guy just because of bringing a guy. And we'll talk about that more when we get to the math of what's available for the salary, for the cap space on the trade deadline. But that's not how this works. There are spots where, hey, we might need an injection of something. And I think we'll talk about that spot here in a bit. But cornerback is not just, hey, we need a body. We have bodies. Now, if we can get an upgrade, sure, I'm open to that. If you can go get me an upgrade because somebody's selling a starting caliber player, of course I'm open to that. But there's no reason to just add a body into the secondary, because I don't think we have multiple NFL caliber guys already.
Yeah, I agree.
While we're talking about the secondary here, I'll just touch on it while it's there. Tim asked here about if Hyde is still dealing with a concussion, who reps him. I think that it's Juwan Johnson at that true center field spot. I know right now Dean Marlowe gets more reps than him day in and day out because he's better closer to the line of scrimmage and in that nickel role. I think Juwan Johnson would get the playing time at true center field safety if Micah Hyde had to miss this game. For anybody who's not aware, unfortunately, that hit that everybody was arguing whether it was dirty, whether it was a penalty, Micah Hyde got a concussion himself when hitting Brashad Perriman, not just injuring Perriman on that play. So all the more reason why the NFL is trying to get those plays out of the league. Unfortunately, Micah Hyde concussed himself. The good news is he was out on the practice field today. He's not, sometimes you have guys who can't even leave a bright colored room or outside with the sunlight. So he was out with the team today. He was in a red non-contact jersey. He was not in any drills, but that is an indicator that he's already cleared the first couple hurdles.
I was going to say there's certain sections of the protocol you have to clear to even be on the field with your team.
So he is, I will say, on pace to be eligible to play on Sunday as of right now. The first day of practice, he's already out there with the team. That means it's possible he will get cleared. It is not automatic.
No, and it's rare. It's more rare to see guys.
It's less likely to not miss any games.
We've seen it. Josh Allen did it last year.
The Tennessee game? The New England game into the Tennessee game last year he did.
He cleared it. So it does happen. I did think it was a good sign to see him out on the practice field on the first day, because usually that person hasn't cleared that stage of protocol yet. But we're totally speculating. And those things, he could be doing fine today. You're tested every day when you go in. He could be doing fine today and even take a step backwards tomorrow. So you just don't know how those are going to go. So I'm not going to speculate whether he's going to play or not, but I do think I don't know that we'll see Juwan Johnson very much just because of the lack of passing game from the Patriots. I think you end up seeing Marlowe more. We saw
that's a great point.
A number of times we saw Marlowe lining guys up where they're supposed to be.
That great play by AJ Epinesa that AJ blew up outside in one of his, flash plays. If you look back, he sees that play coming and tries to warn him and gets him out there. And there's also another play that he tried to warn Mario Addison. He knew where the play was going and he tried to move Addison inside. And Addison didn't move in and they ran right inside of him for a pretty solid gain. And you could tell that he knew where the play was going. So it just shows what a savvy, smart veteran could do.
He lacks some physical gifts. He's not great in coverage, but I think that the coaches are going to pick one of those guys to roll out. They're going to go with the guy they trust to know where everybody's supposed to be, because that's a big part of what Micah Hyde does. So I do expect to see a healthy amount of Marlowe if Hyde's no-go.
Yeah. So we'll switch into our next segment. Our sponsor, Westher, to make sure you're checking them out. 23 dealerships out throughout New York State. Anywhere that you want to get a car, they'll be able to help it out. And when you get ready to pick out that car, you got to get down to numbers. And we're going to talk about that here. So a handful of the names that have gotten thrown out there. Everybody's heard, why don't we trade for Stefan Gilmore? Why don't we trade for J.J. Watt? The reason's why, because we don't have any money. So the Bills have about $4 million in cap space. Everybody in season, whether you go to overthecap.com or SpotTrack, it's not a perfect number because there's a lot of moving parts. Every time that they release a guy and bring a guy back, there's moving money at all times. It's about $4 million. Some have 3.9, one is 4.2, but it's right around there. To bring anybody in, it would cap that out. So the players that I've been looking at are looking at guys on rookie deals or on cheap deals. So you've seen Marcus Golden get moved. I looked at him because he was on a $3 million deal. There was about $1.5 million left. It was doable. The same with Danny Shelton. With players like the Bengals, it's why I was looking at Carl Lawson. People were asking about Carlos Dunlap. Carlos Dunlap has like $11 million on his contract next year, and $7 million of it counted this year. You couldn't do that trade unless you got them to take back a player. So before we get into any wish list items, I know people saw the report earlier from Dan Graziano that apparently it's being discussed that Trent Murphy could be traded. The reason that might happen is the only way to create cap space during the year is to trade away a player. Any vested veteran, which means any NFL player who is outside of their rookie contract that gets released after week 1, creates no cap space. All of their contracts are guaranteed once they make the week 1 roster. So guys like Lee Smith, or what would have been, people always used to clamor for Patrick DeMarco, or guys like Tyler Kroft and Trent Murphy, their contracts are guaranteed. Cutting them creates no cap space. So being able to do that doesn't open anything else up. Now, that's why you hear about some players that they have veterans that wait till sign till week 2 because it gives the team more flexibility. Right. So now the one exception there is if Trent Murphy gets traded, he could create about $4 million in cap space additional, $4.1 million by my calculations. Yeah, that would get it to 8. So the only 2 scenarios I see that happening are, one, you get a legitimate offer for Trent Murphy, like a 5th or 6th round pick, where it's, hey, that's a legitimate offer. It's a real draft pick. That's what Marcus Golden just went for. That's what Carlos Dunlap just went for. If you get offered a 5th or a 6th round pick, I see we have 9 guys. They're sitting somebody every week. They can make that work, and it's worth it to get that cap space. Or that they simply need to move him because they have another trade lined up that's more than $4 million and they need that money, in which case they can simply offer to find any other team willing to take him, where you would say, hey, we'll trade you Trent Murphy and our conditional 7th round pick for your conditional 7th round pick just to absorb his contract. I don't expect that to happen, but those are the only 2 scenarios I could see.
See, and I think your second scenario of using him to free up space for another trade is the one that makes more sense to me. But that is so difficult. I think the probability of it all coming together in the next, 5-6 days, or something, is very difficult because they're going to have a trade in place with some team, and that team's probably not going to be the one to take on Trent Murphy in his cap. So you're going to have to line up another trade. And that's really tough to do. I know that Bean was able to do that with the Ronald Darby and then the Sammy Watkins deal and moving all those pieces around. But he talked about how difficult that was to have all these things in place. And if one of them falls through, if you end up trading Trent Murphy just to swap picks and get cap, and you don't do anything with that cap and you lose Trent Murphy for the rest of this year, I know people don't love Trent Murphy, and that's fine. But if you're just swapping for the cap and not getting anything really in return, I think Bean and McDermott would rather keep Trent Murphy. And there's been a lot of calls to just cut him. Like you said, that doesn't make sense. He's a fine, productive player.
He's an NFL caliber player. And now that we've already guaranteed his contract, you don't cut him just on principle.
No, and if he's on the roster, he's going to get more snaps than the other guys behind. He still got 42% of the snaps here last week, so he'll get his snaps. It's going to be hard for a team, I think, to take on that money. I can't think of a lot of teams that are going to want to take on that money and that he moves the needle in any substantial way, unless I'm missing an injury somewhere or something like that. So I think it's going to be hard. I think the name got thrown out there. That also, you got to keep in mind too, with some like these ESPN reporters and stuff, that could have come from Trent Murphy's agent.
It 100% came from Trent Murphy's agent.
Yeah, not happy with the way he got the healthy scratch. Maybe not happy with his playing time, because he's out there playing for another free agent contract here coming up. So I think his agent wants him somewhere where he's going to get more playing time, and so to go out there and say there's interest in Trent Murphy, or so some of that might not even come to fruition. Calls aren't even being made, but I'm all for trading him. If that first scenario you talk about, if they could get a 5th round pick for him, see you later, Trent. I don't see that happening. I don't see that type of value. We've seen some of the trades and the different values. I don't think Trent would get that. But we've talked about it here. I will take as many draft picks as we can get for the Bills going into next year, as they're going to be up against the cap, whether they trade Trent Murphy or not. The cap's shrinking. The Bills are up against the cap. They need those picks because they got to get some of these guys here to fill in that depth here for the next couple of years while Josh Allen's still on his rookie deal.
Yeah, and we'll go into the one spot. So when we talked about the reason that we didn't see any value in signing Darryl Worley is because we have bodies. We have guys that do that job, and he's not an upgrade. Obviously, anywhere we can get an upgrade. If somebody wants to give us Evan Ingram, sure, I'll take him. If somebody wants to give us some talented player who would immediately start, of course, we would be open to that. I'm not anticipating that. The one spot that we've consistently had a challenge with is we don't genuinely have a one technique defensive tackle on this roster. We have multiple guys who are doing their best to do it, but Ed Oliver is better as a 3-tech. Quentin Jefferson is better as a 3-tech. Vernon Butler is better as a 3-tech. Harrison Phillips is not rehabbed and prepared to play in the way that they were hoping. We don't have a one technique defensive tackle on this roster. So there's 4 names I'm going to reference here. Dontari Poe was cut earlier today. I'll let you talk about him in a moment here on what you saw when you poked around at just a few plays. The others are 3 potential trade candidates. All 3 are on cheap deals. So one is, I think, our favorite. Dalvin Tomlinson is a pending free agent for the Giants. His rookie contract is about to expire. It's $1 million. There's less than $500,000 left. It's very easy to fit. I'm getting a close second. I might even have a new favorite as I've researched it more, is Tim Settle. Tim Settle is the nose tackle for the Redskins. He is a 2018 5th-round pick, meaning that you have his contract this year and next year as a rookie deal. He's actually the 3rd highest graded defender on the Redskins with a fair amount of reps, and he looked good in the ones that I took a look at. So he's rising higher on my list of guys, and apparently is being talked about as a potential trade candidate. The 3rd one on the trade market is Danny Shelton. I'm mad at Todd Gurley for falling into the end zone, because I think if the Lions lost, he'd be more marketable and available. But out of those names, maybe talk a little bit about what you saw on Dontari Poe and anything that interests you in the other 3.
Yeah, I think Poe's at the bottom of that list.
The 4th out of the 4.
Yeah, and I'm frustrated today by the Twitter kind of just saying Poe is Star Lotulelei. I think that's, I don't want to say
he's 6'3", 350. I get why you'd think it. I thought it for a minute.
And I don't know that it's a little lazy. I hate to say that it's lazy, but it's a little lazy to make that comparison. I do get why people get there, and he can play 1-tech. Like, he's got snaps of playing 1-tech, and he sort of eats blockers. And
he has reps where he does a good job holding.
Yes, he can do it. It's not consistent at all. He's actually lined up a lot at 3-tech. He's more of a penetrator than a Star Lotulelei, which that's not what we need. We have guys that can penetrate from 3-tech. That's
And
clearly
he
not the
used to
problem.
be a world-class athlete for being 350.
Yes, he has back issues, and I think that slowed him down quite a bit. If he goes up against anybody that's got sound technique, they're going to push him kind of right around. I think if people were frustrated with the way they thought Star Lotulelei was playing, you're going to be very frustrated with the way Poe plays that position. You could get some good reps out of him. I think if you miss on the trades, or none of these trades are heating up, or they're not even in on any of these defensive tackle trades, I'm all for kicking the tires on them, bringing them in on a minimum deal. It's better than not having an attack, in my opinion.
Maybe they decide they can IR Harrison Phillips because he needs to rehab more, and you get a free roster spot. I could see it.
Yes, and you bring him in on, what you think are known rushing downs, and you kind of play him at that spot just to have the body there. I can see it, but I wouldn't get very excited. I think maybe the fan base is a little too excited at the idea of him and what he can do because that need is so vast and in everybody's mind. But I would almost rather overpay a little bit for one of those other three guys and then settle for Poe at this point.
Yeah, and I think the two that are most intriguing, I think Shelton's in between the two. I think he's better than Poe. I think the two young guys, Dalvin Tomlinson and Tim Settle, are really exciting options to be able to look at. I like Settle a lot that you get another year of the rookie contract. Tomlinson, you would either trade for him and then lose him which isn't terrible because you get the compensatory pick that you could get some comp pick bingo stuff going. But otherwise, you'd trade him to try to re-sign him, and then that gets into money depending on how much he's going to earn. I like Settle that you get another year of that, and then that pushes it into an offseason in 2022 where you could afford to re-sign him because Starr's contract's coming up. And if you like him in that year and a half, that's a year that you're going to get back to normal cap space, and you could extend him then and keep him around. So I'm really intrigued by that name, something to watch out for. I don't know, obviously the NFC East is a super weird position.
Yeah.
Technically everyone's still alive. So we're talking about two teams that have terrible records and bad teams, but are also one game out of their division leads. So I don't really know how that one's going to work to be able to figure out. But those are some of the names that are out there. I would say, Aaron, I don't know about you, but I don't expect there to be a trade. I'll be excited if there is. I'm not planning on there being one.
No, I think this happens a lot, even though we're seeing more trades in the NFL.
A little bit.
It's trending that way that we're seeing more. I don't think that it's going to be nearly as active as the rumors that are out there and exist. And the NBA is that way, and there's a ton of trades in the NBA, but half the rumors never come to fruition. It's a lot of just speculation, agents putting things out there to get some interest or guys out of their spot. So I don't expect it to happen. If some team out there really just wanted to unload their starting guard, I would be all for that, but I don't expect that to happen either. But yeah, I think a lot of the positions people, here on Bill's Twitter are looking for it. For me, it really comes down to the one tech. I don't need a pass rusher. I'm not going to get mad every time a pass rusher gets traded. It's just, would it be nice to have extra of those things if cap didn't exist and assets weren't valuable? Yes, sure, I would love all those things. But I do think the Bills need to hang on to as many draft assets as possible. And why I like those younger guys that you mentioned at the one tech is the ability to potentially get them in and then sign them, or in Tomlinson's case, get him in and then you get a pick in return after you traded a pick to get him. So I want to keep as many draft assets as possible, even if we do get somebody, and that's going to be, I think, a hard balance for Bean, because I know he wants to hang on to those draft assets here going forward as much as possible too, more so than I think fans do. But yeah, I don't expect really anything to come to. I honestly expect them to kick the tires on Poe here in the next week, and probably will bring him in on a minimum.
Yeah. So there's a couple names that come up with the Giants. Obviously, people brought up Evan Ingram. I don't expect that. If I don't want Evan Ingram. They're going to kick the tires on a guard. If they want to get rid of Kevin Zeitler, I'd take him.
Yeah.
That's one where we would have to make a move for Trent Murphy to free up. I think his number is probably closer to 6 or 7 million for what's left on his contract. But yeah, if there's a chance to be able to bring in our starting guards with John Feliciano and Kevin Zeitler the rest of the year, I'd be on board with that. Let's kind of get to the end of the options here. And, we've talked about how nervous we are. We've talked about how important this game is. I am going to have crazy nervous energy. My house is going to be the cleanest that it's ever been at like 12:59 on Sunday morning. That's what I do. I end up going around just cleaning stuff up and doing things around the house up until kickoff. What do you predict to happen?
I think the Bills are downplaying this game as just another game, and it's important. I think you're going to get a little bit of Bills coming out a little too amped up for this game. That kind of amped up Josh that we've seen.
Sugar High Josh.
A little bit of Sugar High Josh. He gets amped up for games like this. I think this game, he talked about the last Patriots game where he got hurt being a kind of moment of change in his career. I think this is one that maybe he comes in overthinking a little bit, unfortunately. I think the weather is something that I'm super concerned about. I think that their ability to run the ball, the Bills have done a good job. I think they've actually done a better job against the run than a lot of people think. They got torn up a little bit here this last week, but the 2 weeks prior to that, not KC, they did a really good job against the Raiders. They did a really good job against the Tennessee Titans, who both also have good run offenses. So they faced a number of teams that can do it. I don't think it's going to be able to hold up here in the weather with the Patriots having something to prove. I don't like this game at all, to be honest. I really don't. I hate to do it, but I'm going to pick the Bills to lose here. It's going to be close. I think it's going to be sloppy. It's going to be one of those really annoyingly close and sloppy games. I have it 19-17 New England Patriots coming out with a win. I think Bills Twitter melts down. I think people start freaking out because they didn't make any massive trades. I don't think it's the end of the season. I think it changes my expectations of the team if they drop this game. I think that they're more, a borderline still playoff team and playoff caliber team, but they're not the competitor I think that I thought they were. So that's really where I'm so nervous about is I do think that this really kind of changes my expectations of the season if they do drop it like I think.
So I'm going to talk to the fans listening and the guys in the chat because Aaron and I are no longer on speaking terms for 3 minutes. I'm not at that point. I've seen too much from the Patriots with how they've struggled. I think the Bills know how dependent they are on both the running game and the game script. I think they're going to be aggressive early offensively. I think fans, you're going to know by the end of the first quarter how this game's going to go. If the Bills are first and get up early, it is going to be incredibly important. Just like that Titans game, when we saw what happened early on and it just tilted the outcome of that game because of the stupid early turnover and that quick touchdown. I think we're going to know very quickly. I expect the Bills to come out really aggressive offensively. I expect them to come out selling out to stop the run because they know that's the Patriots' only shot to do this. There is nobody that's beating them over the top. They don't have any deep threat whatsoever on this roster, and they don't have a quarterback who can get the ball to that guy even if they did. They are going to sell out to stop the run. And we're going to find out very quickly, can they do it? If they know what's coming and they know that's their only option and they sell out to stop it and the Patriots can still run on them, that's going to tell you all you need to know about the rest of this year because of some of the other teams when they go to play at Pittsburgh, when they go to play at Baltimore, when they go to play Kansas City again in the playoffs, Tennessee again. If they can't figure out how to do that, it's going to tell you all you need to know. I think they can. I think that I think you're right about all the buildup. I think the team knows it. I think McDermott knows it in his heart. He's not going to admit it. He knows how important this game is to get Belichick when he has a chance. I think the Bills are able to pull this out because they come out early. I don't think there's any scenario where it's a close Bills win or a Patriots blowout. I think it's either a close Patriots win or a Bills blowout because I think if that team gets up, they're going to be able to do it. If the Patriots get up early, they're going to be able to hold on and win this game close. I think Buffalo's going to be able to win. I think it's going to be ugly, and I think it's going to be like 23-9. I think that they're going to have multiple field goals. I think it's going to be an ugly game. I think that they're going to be able to get up early enough to get them out of what they're doing. I'm going to pick 23-9 Buffalo, that they're going to be able to pull this game out because I don't think the Patriots are going to be able to get their offense back together after what we've seen the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on the what we see in the first quarter is going to dictate this game, and that if the Bills don't jump out to a lead, that this is going to be a slow, ugly ball control game, and I don't like the Bills' chances in that.
Bet all your money on the under. Put all your money on the under.
Yeah, especially with the weather. And part of me picking the Patriots in this is the old classic reverse jinx.
I like it.
I have to put that out in the universe, and I can't do it until we do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And until the
Bills,
you
said, McDermott's never beat Belichick.
Yeah, and it goes beyond that. And I know you can't compare old regimes and teams. It's just until that monkey is off this organization's back. And I've never seen Belichick lose 3 games in a row, let alone 4 games in a row. So I don't even know what's going on. My brain can't comprehend all of the things that are going on right now that I'm seeing. And it just feels weird the way it's lining up. But I agree with you. If they can get out to a lead first quarter, I'm going to sit back feeling a lot better about this game. But if this thing's close and the Patriots get out to a lead in the first quarter, oh man, it's not going to, I'm going to stay the hell away from Twitter. I might even have to stay away from Slack if that starts to happen.
It'll get ugly. Yeah. All right, folks. Thank you so much. This is going to be a really big week for both teams. If you enjoyed what you're listening to tonight, go and give us a rating or review. Our friends at T-Shirt University are going to be doing another gift card giveaway. Anyone who gives us a rating or a review from today until the end of the game, we are going to pick out a winner. I saw the shirt that G-Funk Jimmy picked out. It's awesome. Check out what they have going on. You're going to be able to enjoy it. Give us a rating, give us a review, tell a friend about the show. We really appreciate it. Thank you to our sponsors at Uncle Jumbo's. Thank you to West Her. Thank you to Paul Bannock Realty. Make sure you're checking them out. Aaron, where can the people find you?
After predicting the Patriots win, I don't want you to find me, but be nice to me. You can find me at Aaron Quinn 716.
You can find me at Greg Tompsett, GregTompsett. Come and have some fun. You have been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.